Hi, this is Teddy. And this is Arthur. And you're listening to Nancy Harris from Idaho. On Two Butts Talk Politics. Enjoy. Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. This is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, and I am here on this episode with Nancy Harris, who is running for Senate from Idaho. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Kelly. How are you today?
Great. Thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
So maybe we could start. Just give me a little bit of background about yourself and why you want to run for Senate now.
Well, Kelly, all my life, I have been on the leading edge of women entering the all-male workspace. I was the first woman in Idaho to sell cars. I was also the first woman in Idaho to sell for the Xerox Corporation. And I had a very illustrious sales and marketing career. In 1992, I started my own company, Wooded River Clothing Company, and grew it to a $2 million a year business, which I sold that in 2004 and took an early retirement. But Washington swap printers have created the myth that you have to be a Republican to be a savvy business person. Let's be honest, companies with progressive values are truly great businesses. And those were the values I used in my organization. I cared about my employees. I got to know their families. I paid them a living wage, provided health insurance, and we all thrived. But why I'm running for Senate is I kind of feel like I've been called. 2 years ago, I became extremely alarmed when congressional effort to repeal the ACA. I got on an airplane and I joined hundreds of other activists in D.C. to stop that repeal. And you know what? We won. But Congress didn't stop there. Our dreamers became their next target by executive order. And once again, I joined the activists in D.C. protesting that order. Fortunately, the courts stopped that executive order. But what really happened, why I'm running, is I was sitting in a meeting one Saturday with other members of our local chapter of the National Organization for Women. And I remember it as clear as day. It was 12 noon, Saturday, October 6th, when the news alert appeared on all of our phones that Kavanaugh was confirmed to the United States Senate. And that was the moment of my calling. I knew we had to have women in those Senate seats to stop this appointment of unqualified, unsuitable people to the courts and to our higher offices. I interrupted that meeting and announced my candidacy, and I haven't stopped since. And wouldn't you agree, after 129 years of statehood, Idaho deserves to have its first woman in the United States Senate?
Yes, absolutely. So, a lot of people, as they're going through, the possible ways that Democrats could win back the Senate, I don't often see Idaho on those lists. The past couple of Senate elections, the Republicans have won pretty handily. So what do you think is sort of your path to victory? What do you see as your way of winning this seat in Idaho?
Well, Idaho is a really red state. Actually, it's probably the reddest of the red state. But I don't think it's about being a Republican or a Democrat, but about supporting working people, of taking care of our schools and taking care of our public lands. Idahoans are showing themselves to be progressive on a lot of issues. Last year, we had a referendum for Medicaid expansion, and 62% of Idahoans voted for that Medicaid expansion. I'm just an everyday Idaho woman running on the issues that matter to everyday Idahoans. We have a strong plan. We're going to be out talking to people. We've identified a strategy and putting together a team that will canvass, go door to door, and event to event.
So have you started talking to people around the state? What do you think the issues that they're really concerned with are?
Well, I think first and foremost, healthcare continues to be a big issue and a big drain on families. I believe that Medicare for all is our best solution. From a business perspective, if you look at administrative cost, Medicare expenses run under 2%, while private insurance is around 18%. That's a spread of 16%, or about $500 billion that could be actually applied to healthcare benefits. Idahoans know their education system has to be improved. We rank dead last, 51, in all of the entities of our school systems. Studies show that children who attend pre-K perform better over their lifetime, and we support pre-K for all American children. The other thing that I hear often is the cost of higher education is an unsustainable burden on our young generation. We hear all the time from people that will never be able to pay off their student loans in their lifetimes. What we're doing is creating a class of workers who are going to be indentured servants to the federal government and to lending institutions. So student loans is the one consumer loan that cannot be discharged in bankruptcy. It follows you literally to the grave. And I know that's true because CBS just had a report out on this, that 3 million Americans aged 60 and older owe more than $86 billion in unpaid student loans, and their Social Security benefits are garnished for the rest of their lives. We need to support our working families, and that may include folks in their 60s and 70s who cannot afford to retire. They may also be raising grandchildren. And we must consider that artificial intelligence is replacing our labor force. The CEO of Yahoo predicted that half the jobs in the U.S. will be lost to AI in the next 25 years. We must use American ingenuity to think beyond traditional working paradigms. I also firmly support the Green New Deal as a roadmap for our future infrastructure to rebuild America.
We did an episode last year on the politics of Idaho. And
oh, you did?
Yeah. And, one thing that seemed to really stand out is that the panhandle seems to be rather more progressive, at least sort of the northern part of the panhandle. Do you see those sort of variations in the politics across the parts of the state? I think people don't have a very good sense of sort of Idaho geography and the different parts of the state and what might be going on there.
Well, there's some areas of North Idaho that, or the Panhandle, as you called it, that have progressive agenda around Coeur d'Alene. Truly, the Treasure Valley here, Ada County, where Boise is housed, is our giant blue bubble. We're often called the great state of Ada. I think that we see probably the Panhandle issues very differently. I don't know if you're familiar with the Redoubt movement, the Redoubters in North Idaho. They're a group of separatists that want to take eastern Washington, parts of Oregon, Montana, and northwestern Wyoming and form a separate state they'll call Liberty that is built on white Christian philosophy. And they are a white supremacist group and very active in their, they radically control North Idaho politics. The progressive people you're talking about are absolutely fabulous people, and they are working very hard to suppress this rise of white supremacy in our northern panhandle once again.
You mentioned that you are in favor of the Green New Deal. Could you talk a little bit about the ways that changing energy policy might affect Idaho, both in energy and in the kinds of jobs that might be created and the industries that could come to Idaho?
Well, we are very proudly moving forward with our green energy with a goal to be completely independent of fossil fuels here in the next few years. We have a tremendous hydropower system, which has really fueled our independence from coal-driven power plants, and natural gas. But the problem with them is they have been installed along our Great Snake River and down through the Hells Canyon. As a result, it's virtually sent the salmon extinct in our rivers, which are famous for our salmon reproduction. So there's a lot of talk about bringing those down. Where we're really growing is in our solar farms and in our windmills. We really expect windmills and solar energy to be our sole source of energy, or the majority source of energy here very soon. Getting the technical training and bringing in a new set of future labor is really important to the state.
You said earlier that Idaho has never had a woman senator. That's perhaps not surprising, but terrible at the same time. You know, we're still nowhere near parity, although a lot more women have joined Congress in 2018. What do you think that means for Idaho, for the country, to have more women, to have greater representation by women?
Well, it certainly is going to help in a lot of the women's issues that we see now. Idaho has only had one woman ever run for United States Senate, and that was in 1962. She was a 5-term Congresswoman, Gracie Post. And so we haven't even had another woman stand up to run since then. I think that this is really important. What I'm really seeing now is I have dozens of these fantastically well-educated, very smart young women who have come to work on my campaign. And they all are coming out with the intention of someday running for office. What I see particularly helpful with my campaign is giving them the opportunity to develop their profiles, to develop their expertise, so that as they come up, they will be able to take office in an authoritative way.
Can we talk some about healthcare? That's, the major issue is still for most Americans, and the same in Idaho. It's, the thing we're hearing all over the country is people are still saying, even with all of the other issues going on, that healthcare is what is really troubling them. What are some of the policies that you would like to see around healthcare, or some of the support structures that you'd like to see?
Well, I definitely would like to see a single payer system. One of the main suppliers for Medicare services is United Healthcare, and their CEO just took millions of dollars in compensation last year. We cannot afford to have money set aside out of people's premiums, corporate premiums, Social Security, going to this gross wealth for upper management, this gross compensation for upper management to continue. It's bankrupting our country. So we have to develop a system like Medicare for All with a single payer that may have private insurance administration that is more equitable to the paying of expenses. I think that we will be expanding more into our allied services, such as nursing assistants, physician assistants, different practitioners, making them more affordable, letting people become more accustomed to using telemarketing. Different systems like that will make healthcare more affordable.
Idaho is one of the least diverse states in the country, about 91% white. But, obviously that can create problems for people who are not white. And you call out very prominently on your website that, you want to fight for justice and equality for all. Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned earlier sort of the white supremacist movement, but more widely than those particular people, what does that look like on the ground in Idaho? And what do you think the federal government can and should be doing better to support the rights of everyone?
Well, first and foremost, as far as the white supremacists are going, we have to begin to label them as terrorist organizations. That's all we can do. And call it what it is. As long as we look at other entities as terrorist organization, but we don't recognize our own homegrown terrorists, we're not going to adjust that. Where I see the biggest problem here in Idaho for racial issues is within the Latino, Hispanic communities, because we have such a large population of Hispanic people. As I like to say, there is no potato, no bushel of grain, no quart of milk that does not pass through brown hands. We our agricultural industry relies on our Hispanic brothers and sisters. And what we see with the really hard right is their miscalculation that we should send them all back to their home countries, which are often many generations here in the United States, and replace them with our white labor. Well, I don't know. I don't think that's a very useful or realistic solution. We work to stand up for that all the time, or that's been a great issue of mine is protecting against ICE raids and things like that. They live in terror, and they often live in mixed houses where maybe you have someone who is of legal status and someone who isn't of legal status. So it makes the legal status afraid to exercise their rights fully as American citizens.
One of the upcoming events you have is fishing with you. Can you talk a little bit about that? That's certainly not something I've seen on other candidate websites.
Well, first of all, it's tongue-in-cheek. It isn't my senator I'm competing against, but he is one of my senators that I have frequently visited his office, Senator Mike Crapo. Came out here in the news a couple of weeks ago that he will let you go fishing with him for $15,000 for an afternoon on the Chesapeake Bay. $15,000 donation to fish with him. And so we're doing, we've had to reschedule the date a little bit, but we're going to do a fishing with Nancy, and we will have a fishing pool set up where you can put your line over and get some sort of a prize from it, and mostly have the opportunity to come and talk to me and fish for me, and I will not charge them $15,000, nor could I accept a donation of $15,000 because that exceeds our FEC donation limitations.
Right. So speaking of donations, what are some ways that people can help out your campaign?
Well, we welcome helping out, and that can be done on my website, nancyharrisforsenate.com. And in addition to donations, we also are looking for volunteers. So if somebody wants to volunteer, we have a little application form, and we would welcome their help.
And this seems like a race that people should think about getting involved in these states with smaller populations. It doesn't take as much money and, quite as many volunteers, perhaps, to win as, winning a really big Senate seat, a place like Georgia or something.
Well, that's probably true in gross dollars. But, our 2 Senate seats are just as important as the 2 Senate seats in California or in Georgia.
Exactly.
And I will tell you that my opponent has $3.5 million sitting in his donation bank ready to draw upon, and we expect him to receive about $5 million in additional funds. So when you look at the value of helping with my campaign in that Senate for progressive values, there's a lot of dollar value to have this seat turn blue because it has the same voting rights, and it always, at this point in time, we have not had a Democrat in here for about 40 years. So it's time we put some blue in the Idaho Senate.
Yes. And what are some of the things that donations go to? I always like to make sure that people know if they're donating to candidates, what that might mean. So what are some of the kinds of expenses that a Senate campaign has?
Well, right now it's really gasoline for the car. It's palm cards for the volunteers. It's door knocking. We just signed on to the national database in GP, so we have good resources. That's put us into a fixed expense that for me is a lot of money. My husband and I were retired. We're not wealthy people. We are just an everyday Idahoan. So we're really just feeding the very basics of getting out and seeing people and making this work. We're not talking about national advertising or statewide advertising. We're talking about keeping the lights on, keeping the printing presses going, and talking to people.
Excellent. Are there other things that you would like to make sure that we talk about today?
I think that the only other thing I would really like to talk about is how wonderful our state is. You know, we have more public lands, more federal-owned lands than any other state in the union. They're majestic mountain ranges. We have the first dark, secluded site up in our Stanley Basin where it is a low-light penetration so you can truly see the night sky. We are fishermen. We are hunters. We water ski, we snow ski, we whitewater raft, we kayak. We have parks and bicycles and wonderful expeditions that you can take and explore our great state. We're good people, we work hard, and we're awfully proud of our state, and we want to make sure all of our people are well cared for.
Sounds like it would be an excellent place to go take a vacation and help out your campaign.
It would. By golly, that's quite an idea. I welcome people to come and go see the mountains and then come back and help my campaign.
All right. Excellent. So we will put links on our website up to your website and to your social media as well. You know, I think people don't realize how much that can really help get word out about campaigns and hopefully help the national media realize that, you know, there's another race going on that people should pay attention to.
There certainly is, and we'd love to have them pay attention to us.
All right. Excellent. Well, Nancy, thank you so much for speaking with me today. I think this is a really exciting race, and I'm really glad that you're running.
Well, thank you, Kelly, for inviting me, and I hope you'll give me a call back next fall. We'll talk again and see how it's going.
All right. Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Wethlin and was created for use by this podcast.